Hello everyone, Alex here from WarrenOffKeys.com, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can create a slow mode command to be able to adjust the slow mode setting on a specific text channel. Real quick, before we start, if you do need help with anything, then feel free to ask in the Warren Off Keys Discord server. As you can see, we have a bunch of people joining every day. Once you do join, you can scroll down to the JavaScript channel and ask your Discord questions there. So with that said, let's get started. I'm going to be using the Commando framework. A link to how to use this framework can be found in the video description, but if you are familiar with a different command system, then feel free to use that. I'm going inside of my commands directory and inside of my MISC folder, and I'm going to make a new file called slow.js. The first thing I have to do in order to create a command is to first import Commando, and then we are going to export a class, which is going to extend Commando's command class, which will then give us all of the functionality we want. So to start off, we could say const commando with a capital C because this is going to be a class equals require discord.js-commando. Now at this stage, we have to export a class. So module.exports equals class. We'll call this slow command. And this class is going to extend or inherit, using the extends keyword, commando.command. Now within here, we have all the functionality that Commando gives to us. We can go ahead and create a constructor. This is going to have one parameter, which is a client. And within here, we have to call the super method, which will invoke the constructor of the command class, which we are extending. This takes in two arguments. The first one is a client. The second one is an object, which will contain some information about this command, such as the name, which will just be slow. The group will be MISC because we are inside of the MISC folder. We can then have a member name, which will also be slow. We could then have user permissions, which is going to be an array of permissions that the user who is running the command must have. For simplicity, I'm just going to use administrator, but you can use whatever you want. We're then going to have a description, which is going to describe this command. You can add it whatever you want, but I'm going to say changes the slow mode duration for this channel. Now at this stage, we have to create a run method. So run equals, we're going to have access to message and arguments. The first thing we want to do is gain access to the channel that this message was sent in, and channel is going to be a property of the message object, so we can destructure it. So const channel equals message. At this stage, we want to get the duration that is specified within our arguments, and because args isn't a very meaningful name, I'm going to create a new variable here. So let duration equals args, and we want to allow people to say slow off or slow disabled or something like that to actually turn off the slow mode within the channel. Alternatively, you can pass in 0, but we want to allow for both functionalities just in case the server owners who are using your bot would prefer to type out the word off. With that said, we are going to be comparing some strings, so it is important that we convert our arguments to lowercase with dot to lowercase. Now at this stage, we're going to check to see if duration equals off. So if duration is exactly equal to off, we then want to say duration equals 0. Now we also want to make sure that duration is actually a number, and we're doing this after the off check because off is technically not a number, of course, and so that's why we convert it to 0. And so now at this stage, when we go to check to see if duration is a number, it won't have a problem with that. So in JavaScript, we can do that with if is in, where the ins are capitalized. This is a built-in function. We can pass in duration. And then within here, this if statement will be ran if duration is not a number. So we could then complain to the user, message.reply, please provide either a number of seconds or the word off. So keep in mind that the duration is going to be in seconds. And now at this stage, now that we've complained to the user, we can just simply return. And then scrolling down, we now want to actually change the duration of the slow mode for this specific channel, which we've destructured on line 17. So if we go to the Discord.js documentation at discord.js.org, and we click on documentation right here, we can then do a search for text channel. And we see this class right here. Clicking on it and scrolling down, we see available properties and methods that we can access, one of which is the set rate limit per user. When I click on this, this is going to be the method that we can use to adjust the exact slow mode for the channel. The first argument is going to be the rate limit per user, which is a number, and this is going to be the new rate limit in seconds. The second argument is optional, as you see from this checkbox right here under the optional column, and this is a string that is the reason. The description is the reason for changing the channel's rate limits. So you can adjust that if you want, but first I'm going to show you how to only adjust the rate limit. So going back into our code, we can then say channel.set rate limit per user. We can pass in the duration, and then we can reply to the user saying message.reply with a template literal. We can say the slow mode for this channel has been set to, and we want to enter in the duration. Obviously you can add in whatever message you want here. We can go ahead and save this, and then going into my console, I can run the bot with node index.js. Going into Discord, I'm going to my tutorial channel. If I minimize this, we see that there's no slow mode enabled. But if I do !slow 60, we then see the slow mode for this channel has been set to 60. We see slow mode is enabled. And when I right click on tutorial and I go to edit channel, we then see right here, slow mode is set to 1 minute. Now I can go back and I can say !slow either 0 or off, because me typing in off in any type of capitalization, so let's just say this, is going to convert the duration back to 0. So this is basically the same thing as me typing 0. We now see that the message has disappeared. And when I go to edit the channel again, we see slow mode is now off. But what happens if we want to adjust the reason? So I can go back, I can stop my bot, and going back into VS Code, scrolling up, we now want arguments to be an array where the first element of that array is going to be the exact duration, and every element after that is going to be the exact reason. Now by default, Commando is going to have the argument parameter be a single string that is going to contain all arguments that the user passed in. We don't want that though, we want an array. We can change this with the arg type option within this object up here. We can change this to multiple, and now arguments right here is going to become an array. Now with that said, we probably want to check how many elements are in this array. We probably should have done that previously as well to make sure that something was actually passed in as a duration. So if you're not wanting to add a reason, then still add this part here. So we can say if args.length is exactly equal to 0. At this stage, that means that the string is going to be an empty string when it comes to the previous implementation of just duration. But also in this exact case where it's an array, that means that this is going to be an empty array. Now, if you want there to be an optional reason where only the duration is required, then we can change this. So if args.length is now less than 2, that means that anything that is 2 or higher is going to be okay. And so the first element is going to be the duration. The second element will be some type of word for the reason, but we might want to include a sentence, which is why we have 2 be the minimum, because that reason could be 1 word or 20, we don't know, and so we want to use a less than 2 operator in order to check the length of this array. At this stage, we can say message.reply, please provide a duration and a reason. We can then return. Now right here on line 23, we see args.to lowercase, and this is assuming that the arguments is still going to be a full string. We don't want that though, we only want the first element of the array. We also want to remove that element, and arrays in JavaScript have a function called shift, which will remove the element from the array and return it. So if our array, for example, was 10 and then testing, let's say that the only reason was testing, in this case, we are going to take the 10, return it into duration, and we are going to then remove it from this array. So now the array args only has the remaining reason that we passed in as the command sender. So now scrolling down, whenever we use set rate limit per user, as we see right here, reason is a string as the second argument. And so now we can pass in the args, but this is technically an array. This is not a string. And so arrays within JavaScript have a method called join, which is essentially going to combine every single element within that array into a string separated by a certain other string, which we specify right here. So I'm adding in a space, and to better explain this, let me show you what would happen here. Let's say that we have testing hello world, obviously a very weird reason, but just for demonstration purposes, and we want to convert this into a string. With .join, passing in an empty space, our array would then look like testing hello world with spaces in between each element of the array. So now we can go ahead and save this. I can go start my bot again, and going into Discord, I can run !slow 60, and then it says, please provide a duration and a reason. So if I were to just type !slow, we see the same thing. If I say slow and then testing hello world, obviously just a demonstration reason, it then says slow mode is enabled. However, if we want to see why exactly this was changed, we can go to our server settings, we can go to the audit log, and then right here we see the tutorial has made changes to the tutorial channel. Clicking on this, we see with reason testing hello world. And so this is one way that you can actually view the reason as to why this change was made. And so that's one reason why you might want to force a reason argument within this command. But this is how you're going to create a slow mode command within Discord.js. Thanks for watching this Discord.js tutorial. If you want to learn more about Discord.js, consider clicking on the playlist you see on your screen now. If you need help, feel free to leave a comment or ask in the Worn Off Keys Discord, which can be found in the video description.